He thought the badge on his chest made him untouchable. He had no idea hers could end his career. The late afternoon air in downtown Baltimore carried that sharp November chill that slipped through coats and settled in your bones. Traffic rolled slow along Lexington Street, horns blaring in short, impatient bursts, while people hurried past storefront windows glowing gold against the gray sky. It looked like any other weekday in America, the kind of evening where strangers pass each other without ever remembering a face. But in less than 3 minutes, everyone on that block would remember hers. Ava Brooks walked with calm purpose, heels clicking against the sidewalk in a steady rhythm, a leather portfolio tucked beneath one arm. She wore a charcoal coat, dark slacks, and the kind of quiet confidence that made some people look twice without knowing why. Her eyes moved forward, focused, unreadable. She didn't rush. She didn't drift. She moved like someone who always knew exactly where she was going. Across the street, Officer Ryan Cole watched her from beside his patrol unit. Tall, broad-shouldered, jaw set tight, he carried himself like the street belonged to him. Some officers wore authority lightly. Ryan wore it like armor. He had spent 12 years behind a badge, and too many of them believing suspicion was the same thing as instinct. The moment he noticed Ava, something hardened in his expression. He stepped away from the cruiser, one hand near his belt, the other raised sharply. "Ma'am, stop right there." Heads turned. Ava slowed, then stopped. She looked at him without fear, without apology, without surprise. "Is there a problem, officer?" Her voice was even, polished, controlled. Ryan didn't answer the question. He circled half a step, eyes narrowing as if confidence itself offended him. "Where are you headed in such a hurry?" "I'm walking," she said. "That's not a crime." A few people nearby glanced over, then quickly looked away. Everyone knew the rule of city sidewalks. Keep moving. Don't get involved. Ryan gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "We'll decide that." He motioned toward the hood of his patrol car. "Set your things down." Ava studied him. For a moment. No anger. No panic. Just a long, steady look that somehow made him more irritated. Then she placed the portfolio carefully on the hood. Ryan opened it without permission, flipping through folders, legal pads, sealed envelopes. Papers lifted in the cold breeze and scattered across the windshield. "You can't search my property without cause," Ava said. "Watch me," Ryan replied. A teenager standing near a bus stop quietly raised his phone. An older man outside a deli froze mid-step. The city had seen scenes like this before. Different faces. Same tension. Ryan pulled out a small notebook, glanced at it, then tossed it aside. "You people always act like the rules don't apply." The words landed in the air heavier than the wind. Some heard them and lowered their eyes. Others pretended not to hear at all. Ava bent down, picked up one of her papers, smoothed the corner, and placed it back on the hood. Her hands never shook. "Are you finished?" she asked. That question hit him harder than protest ever could. Ryan stepped closer. "You don't get to tell me when I'm finished." He reached for her wrist, intending to guide her toward the cruiser. Ava didn't pull away. She didn't argue. She simply looked past him for one brief second, toward the far end of the block. Ryan missed it, but the teenager with the phone didn't. Neither did the woman standing outside the coffee shop. 3 black SUVs had just turned the corner. Their windows were tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they already knew where to stop. Ava returned her eyes to Ryan and asked one more time, softer now, almost patient. "Officer Cole, are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Ryan Cole smirked as if he had already won. The question Ava asked sounded almost polite, and that made it easier for him to dismiss. Men like Ryan trusted volume more than warning signs, and silence had always looked like weakness to him. "I am sure of one thing," he said, tightening his stance. "You are not walking away until I know exactly who you are." Ava glanced once at the portfolio still resting on the hood of the patrol car, papers trembling in the cold wind. "That could have been handled with a conversation," she said. "You chose something else." Ryan gave a short laugh. "You should be grateful I am being patient." Around them, the sidewalk had slowed into that strange public stillness that comes when strangers sense a line is being crossed but are unsure who will stop it. The teenager near the bus stop kept recording, pretending to check messages whenever Ryan looked his way. The woman outside the coffee shop folded her arms tightly against the chill. A delivery driver paused beside his van and whispered, "This is not going to end well." Ryan reached for Ava's wrist again, firmer this time, determined to finish the scene he had started. Before his hand could touch her sleeve, the first black SUV rolled to the curb. Then the second, then the third. Engines idled low. Doors opened almost in unison. 4 men and 1 woman stepped out wearing dark overcoats, polished shoes, and expressions too calm to be ordinary. They were not loud. They did not need to be. The block felt different the moment they arrived. Ryan turned sharply. "Move along," he barked. "Police business." No one moved. The woman from the lead vehicle approached first. Mid-40s, composed, carrying a slim tablet under one arm. She looked at Ryan only briefly before shifting her attention to Ava. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Ava nodded once. "I am now." Ryan frowned. "Who are you people?" The woman reached inside her coat and displayed credentials so quickly that only Ryan needed to see them. His face changed, but only for a second. Pride rushed in where caution should have gone. "Federal," he said. "Fine. Then you know I have authority here." "Temporary authority," the woman replied, often confused with permanent immunity. A few people nearby tried not to smile. Ryan squared his shoulders. This woman was being detained for suspicious behavior. Ava finally spoke again. Walking to a meeting while black in downtown Baltimore. Her voice remained level, but now every word carried weight. The man beside the woman opened a folder and began reading. Officer Ryan Cole, 12 years of service, 7 civilian complaints, 3 internal reviews closed for. Insufficient evidence. Body camera interruptions logged on multiple dates. Ryan's jaw tightened. "That file is sealed." "Not anymore," the man said. Ava stepped forward, smoothing one sleeve as if preparing for an ordinary appointment. "You asked who I am." She reached into the inside pocket of her coat and removed a leather case. She opened it slowly. Gold shield. Federal identification. Civil Rights Division. Even the traffic seemed quieter. The teenager at the bus stop lowered his phone in disbelief. Ryan stared, then looked again as if a second glance might change reality. "No," he muttered. "No, that is not possible." Ava held the badge steady. "For 6 months, our office has monitored patterns of selective stops, unlawful searches, and discriminatory conduct tied to this district. Today was not random. Neither was I." Ryan looked around for someone to rescue him, but the crowd that once avoided eye contact was watching closely now. The same street that had given him silent space was offering none. "You set me up," he said. Ava closed the badge case. "No, Officer Cole. We gave you a chance to choose professionalism. You chose performance." The woman with the tablet turned to Ryan. "Your supervisor is en route. Until then, step back from the vehicle and keep your hands visible." For the first time that afternoon, Ryan obeyed without speaking. And for the first time in years, the badge on his chest looked very small. The wind moved colder now, slipping between buildings and carrying the smell of rain that had not fallen yet. No one on Lexington Street seemed in a hurry anymore. Pedestrians who would normally pass without a glance had slowed into a loose half circle, pretending to check phones, tie shoes, or wait for buses that were nowhere in sight. They all wanted to witness what happened when power met consequences. Ryan Cole stood beside his patrol unit with his hands visible, exactly as instructed, though every muscle in his body looked offended by the position. His face had lost the easy confidence it wore minutes earlier. In its place was something tighter, more dangerous to men like him than fear. Embarrassment. Ava Brooks gathered the papers that had blown across the hood of the cruiser. She stacked each page carefully, smoothing bent corners one by one. She moved with the same patience she had shown from the start, as if disorder around her was only temporary. The federal woman with the tablet stepped closer. "We have secured the body camera upload," she said quietly. "Full audio and video." Ava nodded. "Good." Ryan looked up sharply. "That camera malfunctions all the time." The man with the folder answered without looking at him. Interesting how often technology struggles around certain officers. A few people nearby exchanged glances. Ryan heard them and reddened. "You do not know what it is like out here," he snapped. "Split-second decisions. Real danger. Real criminals." Ava turned to him then, her expression calm but colder than the weather. "And yet somehow you found time to search a woman walking with paperwork in broad daylight." Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. Across the street, a marked police SUV arrived with lights flashing once before going dark. Captain Elena Torres stepped out, coat buttoned high. silver hair tucked neatly behind one ear. She carried the kind of authority that did not need volume. The crowd recognized it instantly and made room without being asked. Ryan looked relieved for half a second. "Captain," finally he said, "this is a misunderstanding." Captain Torres did not answer him. She walked directly to Ava and extended her hand. "Ms. Brooks, I apologize for what occurred in my district." Ava shook it once. "I appreciate that, Captain." Ryan blinked hard. "Wait, you know her?" Torres turned slowly. "I know exactly who she is. The question is why you did not ask before creating a public scene." Ryan tried to recover. "I had reasonable suspicion." "Of what?" Torres asked. "Professional clothing? A portfolio? Existing while inconvenient to your assumptions?" Even the teenager with the phone lowered it to hide a grin. Ryan shifted his weight. "Captain, with respect, I was doing my job." "No," Torres said. "You were performing a version of it." The sentence landed harder than a shout. She held out her hand. "Badge." Ryan stared at her as if he had misheard. "Captain Badge." Now, slowly, painfully, he unclipped it and placed it in her palm. The small metal shield that once seemed to enlarge him now looked ordinary, almost cheap. Torres slipped it into her coat pocket. "Service weapon and patrol keys will be collected inside. You are relieved pending investigation." The street went silent in that deep way crowds do when reality becomes unforgettable. Ryan looked around for sympathy and found cameras, curiosity, and faces that no longer looked away. Ava lifted her portfolio and tucked it beneath her arm. "Captain," she said, "there is more. We believe today is part of a wider pattern, not an isolated event." Torres nodded. "Then we clean more than one desk." The federal team exchanged quick looks. This was bigger than a sidewalk stop now. Ryan's voice came softer, almost unrecognizable. "Ava, Ms. Brooks, I think this has gone too far." She met his eyes for the first time since the reveal. "No, Officer Cole. It went too far long before today. Today is simply when it was noticed." Rain began at last, a light, steady drizzle tapping against squad cars and storefront glass. People opened umbrellas and still did not leave. They had come to see control. They stayed to watch accountability. Rain polished the sidewalks into dark mirrors, reflecting patrol lights, storefront signs, and the faces of people who still refused to leave. Lexington Street had turned into a courtroom without walls, and every person standing there understood that something larger than one traffic stop was unfolding. Captain Elena Torres motioned toward the entrance of the precinct across the street. Inside. Now. Ryan Cole hesitated just long enough to show he was thinking about resisting, then thought better of it. Without his badge on his chest, he looked strangely unfinished, like a costume missing its centerpiece. Ava Brooks walked beside the federal team, portfolio tucked under her arm, heels steady against wet pavement. She did not hurry. She did not gloat. She moved like someone who had seen many men mistake authority for character. Inside the precinct lobby, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Officers behind the front desk straightened. The moment they saw Captain Torres, then stared when they noticed Ryan entering empty-handed. Questions moved through the room without anyone speaking them aloud. Torres pointed to a bench near the wall. "Sit there and wait." Ryan remained standing. "Captain, I have rights." "You still have many things," Torres replied. "Patience would be useful among them." He sat. The federal woman with the tablet connected a device to the lobby monitor. Screens flickered, then displayed body camera footage from less than 20 minutes earlier. The room watched Ryan step toward Ava on the sidewalk. They heard his tone. They heard the assumptions. They heard the sentence he would later wish had never left his mouth. No one in the lobby looked comfortable anymore. Officer Marcus Hill, a younger patrolman near the desk, slowly removed his coffee cup from his lips and set it down untouched. Another officer quietly muttered, "Wow." Ryan leaned forward. "That clip is out of context." Ava finally spoke. "Then let us watch the context." More footage rolled. The unnecessary search. The dismissive language. The hand reaching for her wrist. The moment the federal vehicles arrived. The sound in the room changed from curiosity to something heavier. Recognition. Captain Torres folded her arms. "How many times have I reminded this department that professionalism is not optional?" No one answered. She did not expect one. Ava placed her portfolio on the front counter and opened it. Inside were organized files marked by date, location, and incident number. Citizen complaints. Traffic stop records. Shift logs. Internal memos. Today was not a surprise inspection, she said. It was the final confirmation. Ryan stared at the folders as if paper itself had betrayed him. You have been building a case on me? Not only on you, Ava said. Patterns require more than one name. A murmur moved through the lobby. Some officers glanced at one another. Others looked down. The guilty often fear mirrors more than punishment. Torres turned to Sergeant Ben Larkin, a broad man with 20 years on the job and a reputation for staying neutral. Secure Officer Cole's locker, cruiser, and access card. Larkin nodded once. Yes, Captain. Ryan stood abruptly. You are making me the scapegoat. Everybody does stops like that. Silence hit harder than any response could have, because everyone in the room knew what he had admitted without realizing it. Ava closed one folder and met his eyes. That sentence is why we are here. The teenage witness from the bus stop appeared in the open doorway, still holding his phone. Rain dripped from his hoodie. Captain, he said nervously, I uploaded my video too. In case you need it. Torres gave him the first gentle expression anyone had seen from her all evening. Thank you. Ryan sank back onto the bench. The room had shifted around him. Men who once laughed with him now studied paperwork. Officers who copied his swagger now stepped farther away. The front desk television, muted in the corner, showed a local news banner. Developing story downtown police incident under review. Ava noticed it and said nothing. She did not need to. Torres looked toward the hallway leading deeper into the station. Conference room in 5 minutes, she ordered. Everyone named in those files will be present. Then she turned to Ava. Ms. Brooks, I believe this department is ready to hear the rest. Outside, rain kept falling. Inside, excuses were running out. The conference room on the second floor had no windows, only gray walls, fluorescent lights, and the tired smell of old coffee. It was the kind of room where policies were written, excuses were practiced, and truth usually arrived last. Tonight, truth was already seated at the table. Ava Brooks placed her portfolio in front of her and arranged 3 folders side by side. Captain Elena Torres stood near the door with arms folded, watching officers file in one by one. Sergeant Ben Larkin entered first, followed by Lieutenant Carl Dempsey, Internal Affairs Coordinator Naomi Price, and 2 patrol supervisors whose names appeared repeatedly in Ava's records. Ryan Cole came last, escorted not by handcuffs or force, but by the far heavier burden of being watched by everyone. He chose a chair near the corner. No one chose the seat beside him. Rain tapped softly against the roof above them, a steady sound like a clock counting down. Torres closed the door. Phones on the table. Devices landed one after another. Some gently, some reluctantly. Ryan placed his down with visible annoyance. Ava noticed the cracked screen and said nothing. This meeting is now administrative and federal in scope, Torres said. If anyone still believes this is about one bad interaction on one sidewalk, you are mistaken. She nodded to Ava. Proceed. Ava opened the first folder. Over the last 7 months, my office reviewed stop data from this district. Black residents represented 31% of the population in the service area and 64% of discretionary pedestrian stops. She let the numbers sit in the room. Numbers often speak loudest when people run out of stories. Lieutenant Dempsey leaned back. Statistics can be interpreted many ways. Ava slid a chart across the table. They become clearer when paired with body camera footage, complaint patterns, and officer statements. Naomi Price adjusted her glasses, reading quickly. Her face tightened. Ryan crossed his arms. You built this whole thing on paperwork and feelings. Ava turned another page. And recordings. She pressed a button on a small speaker. Ryan's voice filled the room from a previous traffic stop 3 months earlier. Dismissive. Mocking. Assumptive. Then another clip. Then another. Different dates. Same tone. Same target profile. Ryan looked toward the ceiling as if shame might be easier to bear from that angle. Sergeant Larkin exhaled slowly. I told you to tighten up, he muttered. Ryan snapped back. You told me to avoid complaints. The room froze. Larkin stared at him. That is not what I said. It is what you meant, Ryan replied. Torres stepped in before the exchange could deepen. Enough. She turned to Ava. How broad is this? Ava opened the second folder. Broader than Officer Cole. Narrower than corruption headlines suggest. We identified a culture of tolerated shortcuts. Selective enforcement. Poor supervision. Complaint filtering. Informal coaching on language to avoid discipline. One patrol supervisor shifted in his chair. That is a strong accusation. Ava met his eyes. It is also documented. She placed signed memos on the table. The man stopped speaking. Outside the room, faint footsteps passed in the hallway. Inside, no one moved. Captain Torres removed a pen from her pocket and began writing names on a yellow legal pad. Each name sounded heavier when spoken aloud. Effective immediately, she said. Officer Ryan Cole is suspended pending termination review. Sergeant Larkin is placed on supervisory reassignment. Complaint intake procedures are frozen for outside audit. All body camera failures from the past 12 months are reopened. Ryan stood halfway from his chair. You cannot destroy careers over perception. Ava answered before Torres could. Careers are damaged by choices. Perception only notices later. He sank back down. Naomi Price finally spoke, voice low and honest. How did none of us stop this sooner? Ava closed the second folder. Because systems rarely fail all at once. They fail quietly, one ignored moment at a time. Torres looked around the table, eyes steady and disappointed. Then tonight we stop failing quietly. She signed the pad and handed it to Naomi. In the corner, the speaker light still glowed red from the recordings. Ryan stared at it, as if it were alive. For years he believed the room would always protect him. Tonight, the room was learning to protect something else. When the conference room door opened, the hallway outside was lined with silence. Officers stood near desks pretending to work. Clerks shuffled papers they had already organized, and dispatchers stared too hard at their screens. Everyone wanted information. No one wanted to ask for it. Captain Elena Torres stepped out first, yellow legal pad in hand, followed by Ava Brooks and the federal team. Behind them came the others one at a time, each carrying the expression of someone who had just learned the building remembered everything. Ryan Cole remained seated inside for several seconds after everyone else left. When he finally emerged, the hallway seemed to narrow around him. The same people who once greeted him with nods and easy jokes now found urgent reasons to look elsewhere. Reputation leaves faster than it arrives. Torres stopped at the front desk. Conference room B in 10 minutes, she said. All command staff, community liaison officers, record supervisors, and training coordinators. The clerk blinked. Tonight, Torres replied. Accountability does not need a calendar invite. Ava almost smiled. She followed Torres into the captain's office, where city lights shimmered through rain streaks on the glass. The room was neat but lived in, shelves of policy manuals beside framed photos of academy classes and neighborhood events. Torres closed the door and exhaled for what sounded like the first time all evening. You knew it would be him today? She asked. Ava set her portfolio on the desk. I knew it would be someone comfortable enough to make the wrong choice in public. Torres looked toward the hallway. Comfort has been our problem. Ava opened a fourth folder, thinner than the others. There is one more matter. 3 citizen complaints against Ryan were rerouted before formal review. Someone inside helped keep patterns invisible. Torres' jaw tightened. Names? Not yet, but access logs narrow it. Before Torres could answer, a knock came at the door. Naomi Price entered carrying a stack of files and a face drained of certainty. Captain, you need to see this. She laid the folders down. Each contained and signed summary notes, complaints marked resolved without interviews, and body camera incidents categorized as technical errors despite clear timestamps showing manual shutdowns. Torres turned pages slowly. How long? Naomi swallowed. At least 2 years. And no one reported it. Naomi's voice dropped. Some did. They stopped after nothing changed. The sentence hung in the office like smoke. Ava had heard versions of it in cities across the country. Systems often rely less on villains than on exhausted witnesses. Downstairs, voices rose near the lobby. Ryan Cole was speaking loudly enough to be heard through walls. You are all acting like I was the only one doing the job the way it is really done. Torres closed the folder. That line always comes eventually. She walked into the hallway with Ava and Naomi behind her. In the lobby, Ryan stood near the bench where he had waited earlier, jacket off, tie loosened, anger replacing the confidence he had lost outside. Several officers watched from a distance. I followed what I was taught, he said when he saw Torres. Now everybody wants to act clean. Torres approached until only a few feet separated them. Then let us be clear, she said. If you were taught wrong, You still chose wrong. Ryan laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say now. Ava stepped beside Torres. No, Officer Cole. Hard for her to say now. Necessary too. He looked at Ava, searching for pity and finding none. You planned this whole thing. I documented it, she replied. Planning would have required your cooperation. A low murmur moved through the room. Captain Torres raised her voice just enough for everyone present. Listen carefully. Tonight is not about one officer being embarrassed. It is about a department deciding what it will tolerate tomorrow. No one shifted. No one whispered. Even dispatch phones seemed quieter. She pointed toward the training bulletin board near the entrance. By morning, bias response retraining begins. Complaint review goes independent. Every supervisor signs new audit procedures. Anyone with a problem may put it in writing. Ryan stared at the floor. For the first time, he looked less angry than lost. Ava noticed and said nothing. Some lessons arrived too late to feel noble. Outside, the rain had stopped. Water still dripped from the awning in steady taps. Inside the precinct, people were beginning to understand that storms do not always destroy buildings. Sometimes they clean them. By 9 o'clock that night, the precinct no longer felt like the same building. The usual rhythm of ringing phones, casual laughter, and chairs rolling across tile had been replaced by something quieter and far more unfamiliar. Reflection. Officers moved with lowered voices. Supervisors reread policies they had ignored for years. Clerks sorted complaint files as if paper itself had become evidence. In the lobby, the television mounted above the vending machines ran a local news segment with closed captions scrolling beneath footage from Lexington Street. Blurred faces. Rain on. Pavement. Federal vehicles at the curb. The headline read City Police District under review after public stop incident. No one said they were surprised. Ava Brooks stood near the records counter reviewing access logs with Naomi Price. Timestamps, usernames, deleted notes, altered routing codes. Tiny decisions that had protected larger habits. Naomi rubbed her temples. I used to think misconduct looked dramatic, she said softly. Something loud. Something obvious. Ava continued scanning the screen. Usually it looks administrative. Naomi let out a breath that sounded like regret. I should have pushed harder. Ava turned to her. Then push now. Across the room, Captain Elena Torres addressed a group of sergeants gathered near briefing boards. Starting tomorrow, supervisors sign off on every discretionary pedestrian stop narrative. If your officers cannot explain why they acted, they should not have acted. One sergeant frowned. That will slow the shift. Torres answered without hesitation. Good. Slow mistakes down. Near the bench by the wall, Ryan Cole waited with a cardboard box containing desk items from his locker. A framed academy photo. A coffee mug shaped like a squad car. Spare gloves. Pens with stolen hotel logos. Objects that once looked like a career now looked like leftovers. He watched the room move around him without needing him. That was the part no training ever prepares people for. Not punishment. Irrelevance. Officer Marcus Hill approached carefully, hands in pockets. He was younger, earnest, still new enough to believe culture could be chosen. Ryan, he said, transport is here in 10 minutes to take you home. Ryan gave a tired laugh. Home? Like I am a problem package. Marcus glanced at the box. You could still own what happened. Ryan looked up sharply. You think this is all me? Marcus held his gaze. I think it was you today. The younger officer walked away before Ryan could answer. Truth often lands best when delivered without performance. In Captain Torres' office, Ava signed final acknowledgement forms. Torres handed her a copy of the federal notice. This will get ugly in the morning, she said. Press calls. Union. Statements. Politicians pretending they always cared. Ava slipped the papers into her portfolio. Then let them arrive late. We already started. Torres studied her for a moment. Why do you still do this work? Ava looked through the glass wall toward the lobby, where Naomi was helping an elderly woman file a complaint with unusual patience. Because sometimes one honest night changes who feels safe walking tomorrow. Downstairs, the front doors opened and cool air swept through the lobby. Ryan stood when two administrative officers approached. No cuffs. No spectacle. Just procedure. He lifted the box himself. As he passed the records counter, he slowed near Ava. You enjoyed this, he said quietly. She met his eyes, steady as ever. No. I respected it. He frowned. What is the difference? Ava answered without raising her voice. Enjoyment is about humiliation. Respect is about consequence. Ryan had no reply. He continued toward the exit. Officers who once mirrored his swagger now stepped aside without acknowledgement. Outside, the rain clouds had broken apart, leaving the streets wet and shining under city lights. He paused beneath the awning, holding the box like something fragile. Then he walked into the night without anyone calling him back. Inside, Captain Torres pinned a new notice to the bulletin board. Community trust is a daily practice. Some officers glanced at it and kept walking. Others stopped to read every word. Ava picked up her portfolio and headed for the door. Behind her, phones rang again, keyboards clicked, radios spoke. The building was returning to normal, but not the old normal. Something better had finally interrupted it. The next morning, sunlight poured across Lexington Street as if the city had decided to begin again. Puddles from the night before reflected buses, office towers, and people moving with coffee cups in hand. But beneath the ordinary sounds of traffic and footsteps, something had shifted. News vans lined the curb outside the precinct. Reporters rehearsed introductions into cameras. Residents gathered in small clusters, not angry this time, but alert. They wanted to know whether change had truly arrived or if it was only visiting for the cameras. Inside the station, the lobby bulletin board held 3 new notices where old event flyers used to hang. Independent complaint review procedures, mandatory bias and conduct training, public data transparency schedule. People stopped to read them the way they stop at memorial plaques, unsure whether to feel grief or hope. Captain Elena Torres moved through the building before 8 o'clock, speaking little and noticing everything. Desks were cleaner, uniforms straighter, greetings more careful. Fear can create discipline for a day. Character must create it after that. In the training room downstairs, rows of officers filled folding chairs facing a projector screen. Some sat eager, some skeptical, some embarrassed to be there at all. Ava Brooks stood near the front with a remote in one hand and a stack of handouts in the other. She wore the same calm expression that had unsettled Ryan Cole more than any raised voice could have. Torres introduced her simply. Listen closely. Defensiveness is not attendance. A few eyes dropped immediately. Ava began with no dramatic speech. Just facts. Stop data. Complaint trends. Video examples from departments that had changed and departments that had not. Then she paused on a still image taken from the sidewalk the night before. It showed a crowd watching one officer misuse certainty. No names. No captions. Just posture. Bias rarely announces itself, Ava said. It often sounds like confidence. It often feels like routine. It often survives because good people call it normal. The room stayed quiet. Officer Marcus Hill raised a hand. How do we challenge bad habits without becoming enemies in our own unit? Ava nodded once. By deciding what kind of teammate silence makes you. Several officers shifted in their seats. Hard truths usually require movement. At the back of the room, Naomi Price handed out revised complaint intake packets. She looked different from the night before, shoulders squared, voice steady. Regret can weaken people. It can also reorganize them. Upstairs, reporters crowded near the front desk as Torres gave a brief statement. This department failed standards it publicly claimed to uphold, she said. We are correcting that failure through policy, oversight, and culture. Trust will not be requested. It will be earned. Questions flew at her from every direction. Was this caused by one officer? How many cases are under review? Will there be resignations? Torres answered only one. If one person could cause this alone, then one person could have fixed it alone. Neither is true. Outside, neighbors applauded softly when the statement ended. Not because everything was solved, but because honesty had finally entered the building through the front door. Near noon, Ava stepped outside for air. The city smelled of fresh pavement and food carts opening for lunch. The teenager from the bus stop approached shyly, backpack over one shoulder. Ms. Brooks, he asked. I just wanted to say, I never thought reporting something would matter. Ava smiled for the first time that day. It mattered before you knew it did. He nodded, standing taller than when he arrived. Across the street, workers removed an old banner advertising a recruitment fair and replaced it with a new sign. Community listening session tonight. All welcome. Ava read it, then looked back at the station doors. Buildings do not apologize. People inside them do. Her phone buzzed with a message from federal headquarters asking for updates in 2 more cities. She slipped it back into her pocket. There was always another street. Another room. Another person certain they would never be challenged. Captain Torres stepped outside beside her. You heading out? She asked. Ava glanced at the sign, the cameras, the officers helping residents at the desk inside. Soon, she said. Looks like you have work to keep doing. Torres followed her gaze and gave a small nod. We do. For the first time in years, the station behind them looked less like a fortress and more like a promise. That evening, the community room on the first floor filled faster than anyone expected. Folding chairs that had sat and used for months were unfolded in minutes. Extra rows were added. Then people stood along the walls. Elderly residents in church coats, college students with notebooks, business owners still wearing aprons, parents with children leaning against their knees. Some came angry. Some came skeptical. Some came only to see whether the city would finally listen when no election was near. The room carried the low, restless hum of people who had practiced disappointment for years. At the front, a plain table held pitchers of water, legal pads, and microphones no one fully trusted. Captain Elena Torres stood beside it with command staff on one side and community advocates on the other. Ava Brooks sat near the end of the table, not centered, not spotlighted, exactly where she preferred to be. Real change rarely needs the front seat. Torres opened the meeting with no ceremonial tone. Tonight is for listening, not defending. If anyone from this department feels the need to explain before understanding, remain silent until it passes. A few nervous chuckles broke the tension. Then the line to speak began. Mrs. Eleanor Watkins, 72 years old, stepped first. I have lived on Greenmount Avenue since 1981, she said. I can tell when a patrol car slows near me because they think I do not belong in my own neighborhood. Her voice did not shake. Neither did the room. A young father described being questioned while carrying groceries, and a toddler. A nurse explained being stopped 3 times in scrubs after night shifts. A restaurant owner said officers knew his menu better than his name. Story after story rose like water finally finding cracks in concrete. Some officers at the wall stared downward. Others listened with faces changed by recognition. Naomi Price wrote notes until her hand cramped. Marcus Hill passed microphones, saying little, hearing everything. When the room quieted, Torres spoke. You should not have needed a scandal to be heard. It was not enough, but it was true. Then she turned to Ava. Would you like to add anything? Ava stood slowly. No dramatic pause. No rehearsed smile. Just calm. Many people think accountability begins when cameras arrive, she said. It does not. It begins the first time someone says, that is not acceptable, and means it. She looked toward the officers lined against the wall. Policies matter. Training matters. Data matters. But courage inside ordinary moments matters most. Her eyes moved to the residents. You were never asking for special treatment. You were asking for equal dignity. The room answered with quiet applause that grew into something warmer. Not celebration. Relief. After the meeting, people lingered in clusters exchanging names with officers who had once seemed unreachable. Complaint forms were taken without argument. Business cards were handed out with direct numbers instead of generic extensions. Outside, streetlights glowed over sidewalks still damp from the day before. Ava stepped into the cool night, carrying her portfolio. Across the street, under the bus shelter where he had once recorded everything on a shaking phone, the same teenager waited. They listened tonight, he said. Ava glanced back at the station doors. They started tonight. He nodded, as if understanding the difference mattered. It did. A black sedan pulled to the curb. Before Ava entered, Captain Torres came outside holding a small envelope. One more thing, she said. Inside was Ryan Cole's surrendered badge, sealed for evidence transfer. Torres looked at it for a moment, then at Ava. Strange how much trouble a piece of metal can cause. Ava closed the envelope and handed it back. Metal does nothing on its own. Character does everything. Torres gave a tired smile. Will we get it right? Ava opened the car door. Not every day, but the honest days count more now. She got in and the sedan pulled away, taillights fading into city traffic. Torres remained under the streetlight, badge envelope in hand, watching the station behind her and the neighborhood around it. For years the building had asked people to fear it. Tonight it had begun learning respect. And somewhere in the distance, sirens moved through Baltimore like always. But on Lexington Street, something quieter had won. A badge can command attention. Only integrity can earn trust.